the Homestead Studios in Santa Clarita, California, it's just the Tip-Sters with Melissa Morgan.
Swiss cheese.
If you've got a tip for Melissa, a horrifying thought that just came to you about something you forgot you knew, a small detail about a big case, what George Jetson really meant when he told Jane to stop this crazy thing. Tell us about it by calling the Tipster hotline at 832-TIPSTER. That's 832-847-7837, or send an email to jttipsters@gmail.com. We just might hear your tip on the podcast. And now here's your host. She might be smiling behind that surgical mask, but it's probably a grimace. Melissa Morgan.
More cowbell. I'll tell you what George Jetson meant. He meant, how have I devoted 21 years of my life to someone and almost 19 years of marriage, and they come back with a sandwich for me with fucking Swiss cheese on it.
Oh, now you're not going to start on that again.
Oh, yeah.
You
like Swiss cheese. My mom liked Swiss cheese.
I like Swiss cheese.
Swiss cheese smells like feet.
No,
I have hated it from birth.
It has a nutty flavor.
You're a nutty flavor.
But here's the thing, because now you've made me sound like a complete jerk. I was trying to do the right thing.
Uh-huh.
When I went to the sandwich place, I knew you didn't, and you've had this sandwich before.
I have.
Okay.
It's called, you know what it's called? Pepperoni and cheese.
Pepperoni and cheese.
Guess what it has on it?
It has pepperoni and cheese. So
provolone.
Okay, they did not offer that to me. That's the thing.
Pepperoni and Swiss sounds like a horrible war between two countries. The pepperoni and Swiss war. I love the way you snort and cough.
You're making me laugh and
I'm
snort.
not making you do anything.
No, the guy
brings me back a sandwich.
He offered me
with
pepper
Swiss
jack.
motherfucking cheese.
He offered me pepper jack or Swiss.
Almost 19 years of marriage.
So I'm thinking
21 years together.
She's gotten it before. They only offer Swiss or pepper jack.
No, that isn't all they offer.
That's all they offered me.
Here's you. You're the man in the box.
Yeah.
And whoever's working there that day is like, oh, so do you want Swiss or pepper jack? And you're like, yeah. Well, why couldn't we have provolone I know Melissa likes?
I didn't know you hated
mozzarella. Anything other than Swiss.
I didn't know you hated Swiss cheese that much.
J'accuse! How could you not know? I know you love Swiss. I would have gotten Swiss for you on a sandwich any day, or any other kind of cheese, a lot of other kinds of cheese. I hate Swiss with a white-hot fervor.
I guess you do, and I didn't know it, but, you know.
How could you not know that?
And I'm going to annoy you real bad right
George
now.
Jetson.
I know how much that annoys you.
Enjoy your coffee.
Yeah.
Enjoy your coffee.
I'm enjoying it, but I'm not enjoying being accused of being a cheese monster.
You are a cheese monster. No. In every way, shape, and form. Who brings a sandwich home for their spouse with fucking Swiss cheese?
Jane, stop this crazy thing.
Okay. I had to get that out. I've been holding on to it for the better part of a week.
I was wondering why you were kind of limping. It was like you were keeping it in.
No, I wasn't limping at all. You shut up. And I was keeping it in internally, where it was eating a small hole in my stomach because of my anger at you. Yeah, I'm just saying. That's all I'm saying.
I'm going to have to learn to live with the anger. Good.
And what kind of cheese from now on?
Provolone.
Yeah, or mozzarella or cheddar, anything other than fucking Swiss cheese.
I'm going to get you jalapeno jack.
That's fine. You know what? I'll eat around it.
I'm going to get you habanero jack.
Yeah, I'm going to eat around it because I'm a sissy and don't like hot stuff. Yeah. So all I'm saying, people, is when you pick a spouse, a partner, just remember that they need to know what you like and don't like. And if they bring you home a sandwich with Swiss cheese, you have every right to file a lien against their salary or
their salary.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just saying things.
Every husband out there is listening, going,
no husbands are listening because it's all chicks. Chicks are my jam.
Okay.
I'm not saying I'm leaving you for them. I'm just saying that chicks are typically the ones.
Thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate that.
Look, I think chicks are beautiful. I still, am appreciative of the dick. So anyway, I'm just putting it out there. So anyway,
I'm not going to comment on that.
You don't have to. I think that's a very good plan. I had a different episode in mind for this week, but which, by the way, it'll be coming out on the holiday, I guess, on Memorial Day. However, I received earlier this week a text with no information, just a text from one of my favorite veteran detectives. And I was like, well, now this is fucking fascinating. I stayed up one night really late. Producer Mark and I were having dinner, and I was like, I have to go. And he's like, oh, that's okay. I can work on things in my office. And I left the dinner table and went and printed out this large article from the New Yorker, and then became a little more obsessed and kept digging and found more and more. And it's just a really fascinating thing. And while I had heard about it sort of in conversation, which will explain it a little later, I didn't know how important it was. And the fact that this was sent to me by a homicide detective gives me a lot of hope that law enforcement agencies are opening up to this kind of thing. And the originator of this algorithm believes in community policing. And I really love that. And he has done a lot to get things started. But so before I get into that, I'm going to explain, I love the history of criminology. And while Monsieur Vidocq is still my number one boyfriend, Alphonse Bertillon is kind of up there. He wouldn't have been my boyfriend because apparently he's like, he's kind of crazy a little bit, but he's the kind of crazy that you want who is an inventor and comes up with things that, are still being used to this day, even though some of his ideas were, put by the wayside when things progressed and more knowledge became available. But Alphonse Bertillon was a French guy born in April of 1853, and he died in February of 1914. So he was only 60 years old when he died in Paris. And he came from a pretty well-off family. His father was a statistician. His brother was a statistician. He comes from this family where, numbers are a big deal. And I believe his brother actually was even a demographer, like he, mapping and things like that. So it all kind of lends itself to, maybe it was just in his DNA. But he was apparently, an eccentric, guy. They called him a savant, and I get why they did. And you will see, if you just even type in his name, it's very spectacular. He sort of came up with the mugshot. I mean, not sort of. It was just a few years after, photography was kind of invented. And it was, mostly just to, log pictures of your family and to see who was where. And then it became used in things like solving crimes. And he, again, he's a little bit of an eccentric in that he, came up with this like a rogues gallery of criminals for, that's what they called it. He started the rogues gallery for identifying criminals. And there was really no kind of standard method to organize things like this. And so it was hard to pinpoint people that became repeat offenders, which is going to lend itself to what's going on now in the world of computers and data. It's so fascinating. So, he becomes a criminologist kind of by accident. He goes into the military, and when he gets out, he doesn't really have a lot of discernible skills. So his father says, could he just start working here at the police department? They called him a copyist. So he would, copy down reports. And he started saying, you know what? I'm finding that everyone has unique physical measurements, which of course isn't exactly true. But so he picked a few things, which is just going to be so fascinating, 100 years later when we find out about the Murder Accountability Project. He used the length and breadth of the head, the length of the middle finger, the left foot, and the cubit, which is like from the tip of the elbow to the middle finger. And he, came up with the mugshot. So it was a frontal picture and a side picture of someone who was a criminal. And it kind of as the years went on, it ended up having some flaws when two guys ended up in the same prison and they looked like twins. And the only thing that differentiated them were fingerprints, which, by the way, he came up with 16 groove and ridge measurements that we still use today for fingerprints.
Wow.
I mean, the thing that's so amazing is when you look him up, he has such interesting, beautiful features, but the first thing you see is his mugshot. So he invented the mugshot, and he was like volunteered to be the first mugshot.
His is the first mugshot
yes.
that ever was taken.
Yes, even though he wasn't a criminal.
Oh.
So he's this very handsome guy. So Alphonse Bertillon is a pretty cool dude. He's actually mentioned in Sherlock Holmes, The Hounds of the Baskervilles. One of Holmes's clients said, "You're the second best investigator in Europe right after Bertillon." And, even Holmes is like, "Oh, yeah, thanks." Even he, kind of revered Bertillon. So he's an interesting dude. And I feel like we can know more about the present and the future when we look at the past. I'm not one for excavating. I really don't like it at all. But sometimes you need to kind of look back before you can move forward. And Bertillon is just the perfect example of that. So I get this article from the New Yorker, and there's many articles now about Thomas Hargrove. And I didn't understand the importance of this when I saw it for the first time in a investigation discovery channel, like a 6-part documentary on Lisk, on the Long Island serial killer. And they mentioned the Murder Accountability Project. Now, they mention it as a nonprofit. So my impression was that it's a group of really smart computer nerds who spend time when they have time, when they're not, working or in their lives. This is a nonprofit where everyone's a volunteer, and they spend time creating algorithms to catch serial killers. I had no idea how amazing this thing is, and how I'm going to give you some information that if you want to look up your area, if you have ideas about something, you can get this statistical software for free, and you can get their program for free. They're opening up their project because that's what they're all about, is hoping that law enforcement agencies and smaller cities, they're really calling it community policing. They want people to have the information because Thomas Hargrove went through the same thing I went through or go through I go through it on a much, much smaller basis. Getting no one to answer you, getting no one to pay attention. And ironically, like me, the people that he got to pay attention were local coroners who seeing people on their slabs and understanding the connection. He literally caught a serial killer in Indiana because he wouldn't give up. He wouldn't give up. And he kept, anyway, I'm going to start at the beginning because if I start talking about him, I'll just start salivating.
But I do have to say it's fascinating that he had luck with coroners just like you did.
I know.
It seems like they're the people who seem to be the most interested in this stuff.
Well, they have a job to do, and they do their job. And it's interesting to see them working alongside law enforcement. But apparently even coroners that I've spoken to who have been magnificent to me say, yeah, when I say, wow, I tried let's just say, I'll fill in the blank, Indiana State Police, and I got nothing back. And the coroners have said, yeah, me too. So there's a block or a wall or a shield where sharing information isn't thought of as a positive. The only thing I can go back to is ego. It's an ego thing that I need to solve the case myself. I know what's going on. I'm not going to share information. You're going to muddy it up. I can only think of it as ego. But it's when people work together, things happen. And it can be a really good thing that things like this happen. So Thomas Hargrove is a reporter for Scripps Howard News Service. And he went to the University of Missouri and he majored in public opinion, which I thought was fascinating because I didn't even know that was.
I've never even heard of that.
Yeah, and he wanted to be a pollster. And he is a fascinating guy, and he's a numbers guy, right? So he ends up working for the Scripps Howard News Service before it became defunct. And he, was like, I want to work on polls. And the editor was like, that's fine, but it's not going to just be political polls. It's going to be polls on what anyone needs help with. And he said, great. And then it turned out what the newspaper really needed help with was crime reporting. And he was like, oh, fine. It was not his love. It was not something he wanted to work on. But he starts this project in 2010 because he's reporting on crimes. And he's noticing that certain cities have a much lower solve rate, wondering why certain cities have a higher solve rate. And he's like, I feel that I can manipulate a computer to help pinpoint serial killers, to help pinpoint cases that are connected. And he's like, I think I can do this. And so he worked on it for years. And a lot of misses, it would, come up like, well, there's this in common and this in common. By 2010, Thomas Hargrove, has sent emails, registered letters, anything he can to the police lieutenant in Gary, Indiana. Ironically, we're talking about Indiana again, even though I swore I'd never do it again. Because
Indiana
it's been
creeping up on us.
It's just been a nightmare. Any case from Indiana has been just absolutely awful. So I feel bad when I call and send emails and fill out, public records requests or FOIA requests. I feel bad that I did that and got nothing and was complaining, because here's Thomas Hargrove presenting a police lieutenant, look, I think there's a serial killer active in the Gary area. And nothing. He gets nothing. He gets, he sends them like every 10 to 12 days. Here's more details. Here's 14 unsolved murders of women between 20 and 50. I put in that, and that came up. Strangulation. The death is the same. Strangulation. He's trying, and the police lieutenant's like, no,
that just fries me, man.
My favorite part is that some of these were sent registered mail. So now there's nobody from the Gary Police Department that's going to respond to this. They even in this story in the New Yorker, they're like, yeah, no, they don't even comment. And Thomas Hargrove says, this is one of the most frustrating experiences in my entire professional life. So in 2014, 2015, when Scripps Howard kind of becomes defunct and they sell off everything to other newspapers, Thomas is like, I'm the only one skipping out the door. I have a pension, I've saved up, and now I can focus on what I want to do, which is this murder accountability program. It's called MAP, and it's a great, anagram for what's going on because of what he does. He's the numbers guy. He's the statistics guy. He really didn't want to, do crime reporting, but it became so fascinating to him when, there were all of these cities with clusters of unsolved crimes and people that fit into his parameters. So he's like, I think I'm going to be able to do this and teach this computer how to spot serial killers. So even though he gets absolutely nothing back, he said he remembered one person from Gary who was, kind and answered him, and she was a coroner.
Right.
No one else.
So he started the Murder Accountability Project when? In 2010?
He started in 2010, but it didn't become a real thing solidified until 2015.
Until he got laid off?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, until he, retired, quote unquote, early retirement at the age of 59, and then it became a nonprofit. So he gets these, people, together who can extrapolate this information and put it into his algorithm. And, he's like, I think this is going to work. So back to, 2010, he sends, information to the Gary police who ignore him. However, 4 years later in 2014, a town right next door to Gary, Hammond, Indiana, there's a body of a 19-year-old woman found in a Motel 6. And they used her phone records, and they tracked down this guy who at the time was 43, Darren Van. So once they arrest him, he's like, yep, I did it. I did it all. And they're like, what do you mean? He's like, well, here, let's just go to this abandoned building. There's 6 more bodies here.
Oh, God.
All of them around Gary, Indiana. All of them. And then he sort of offhandedly says, yeah, I've been doing this since like the 1990s.
Jesus Christ.
I've been killing people since the 1990s.
Jesus Christ.
And the only person in those 4 years who responded to him was an assistant coroner in Lake County, Lake County is where Gary and Hammond are. That's the only person who ever responded to him.
To Thomas.
To Thomas Hargrove.
That's and he could have, if they'd listened to him, how many lives would have been saved?
Well, 7. You're exactly right. That was a great question. He killed 14 women, and 7 of them were after 2010, when he said, please, Gary police, you have a serial killer.
Unbelievable.
So this leads Thomas Hargrove to believe, you know what? I think there's a whole lot of, uncaught serial killers out there. I think most cities have a few. Now, here's where I'm going to insert my own opinion. I am not sure that number is true. His data is, he's going for the right thing. He's doing the right thing, but I'm not sure all of his data is correct. There are so many, the Radford University has an amazing database that a lot of people draw from. I'm taking a 1-hour workshop later this afternoon on tracking serial killers.
What? You're taking a murder seminar? I can't believe it.
There are, yeah, I know, shocking. There are a lot of them out there. Serial killers are not typically my focus. They're fascinating, and mostly for their quirks to me and their brain. What fascinates me is how they think they can do this, and why I think that they think they can do this. Why anyone thinks they can take another person's life is the thing that propels me forward. It's like, where does that come from? That's the thing that I'm really fascinated by. But knowing about them, to the extent that we can know, and I'm not a math girl. I barely know how to turn my computer on. Ask producer Mark. I'm constantly saying, help me. I don't know what's happening.
You do fine.
I do not do fine. I'm terrible. Technology, I have weird circuitry in my body. I blow out blood pressure cuffs. There's something weird in my wiring, and I don't like technology very much. I'm appreciative of the gifts that it gives us, but I'm not good at it. So I'm definitely going to download this software, the statistical software. Now, will I know how to use it? Probably not. But knowing that it's available to us, and I will give you the website where you can get this. If you want to work on any of these cases, and there are so many armchair detectives, and it's such a beautiful thing. If you like statistics, if you're good at this, and even if you're not, apparently this is very user-friendly software. You can put in your hometown. You can put in parameters. Let's just say 70% of people killed by serial killers are women, because that's probably true. So, I know that's true, and I'm just going to say that. So 70% of serial killer victims are women. You can put in, let's say you live in Springfield, because there's a lot of them. Springfield, whatever state you're in, women age 20 to 50, unsolved homicides, and see what you get. Via strangulation or bludgeoning, which is typically what serial killers do because they want to prolong the torture. So it's typically not something that's over quickly with a gun, etc. So yeah, you can put this in and see if there's any unsolved cases in your area, because let's just say you have some time on your hands. Let's say you're locked in your house during a pandemic. I don't know.
That'll never happen.
I'm just saying it's a fascinating thing, and this is the kind of guy that wants community policing, that wants, crowdsourcing. And it's an interesting time that we live in. And I really wanted to change. If we hadn't already been doing this for 2.5 years, I wanted to change the name of the podcast to "We're Coming For You, Assholes." Because I feel like I feel a rush of ambition to help in any way I can to fucking find the assholes. And knowing that something like a nonprofit that opens their doors, their books, and is encouraging everyone in law enforcement to do the same thing, it's a fantastic thing.
So it's open to everybody, law enforcement, the public, anybody can use it.
Right. There's probably things they keep back from the public, but the the software, the algorithms you can put in your town. So Thomas Hargrove made it public because he said, if you're the father of a murdered daughter and you don't know what happened or why, maybe you use this software and you put in parameters like what happened to your child, and you may find links that, there isn't manpower or money in law enforcement to do right now. I am just so excited about this. I just think it's a phenomenal thing. Again, I'm not a numbers person. I'm horrible at math, but some of these numbers don't lie. So we know there's a murder rampage, let's call it, in Chicago. Chicago is one of my favorite cities in the universe. Producer Mark and I usually get to go once a year. I don't know if we'll get to go this year because of, everything that's happening, but it's the kind, sweet personalities of the Midwest and the culture of a bigger city like New York. I just love Chicago with all my heart. And it's called, the murder capital, and has been for probably 5-6 years. And when someone gives me information, I tend to go, oh, okay. I'm just very accepting. And when I kept thinking, why would one of my favorite cities become this murder capital? And it was, passed off to me, and I swallowed it. I swallowed it whole. Oh, Chicago's right in the middle of Mexico and Canada, and that's where a lot of drug, exchanges and deals happen. A lot of it is just gangs and drugs. And I was just like, okay, and swallowed it. And this algorithm from MAP, the Murder Accountability Project, is like, no. It's a lot of black prostitutes who are murdered.
You're kidding me.
No, I'm not.
Really?
Yes. Even President Trump, even during his campaign, was like, there's got to be a new era of law and order, especially Chicago. I mean, everyone is sort of, it comes up and then it goes down. These statistics, are brought to our forefront of our brain and then it gets buried by something else. But Chicago still has a problem. And, Thomas Hargrove is like, I think your problem isn't drugs and gangs. I think you have an unsolved serial killer who's going through your city and is going to kill a bunch of... Here's the other thing that's tragic. Let's be honest. Lots of serial killers prey on those disenfranchised. You hire a prostitute or you offer them drugs, and then you find them disposable and you kill them. And a lot of people don't want to look at murders of black women or of women who are, on the street. They don't want to look at that. But we have to. We just have to. So Thomas Hargrove puts in what he calls a cluster analysis. So he puts in geography, sex, age group, and method of killing, which is what, if you get this software, put in your town, put in, female or male. If you feel like, that there's a serial killer killing, men, whether it's young men or gay men or older people, whatever, you put in that information and the method of killing. And I'm telling you, it's really fascinating what happened. So when he wanted to test the algorithms, he put in all of the information. He thought, I'm going to reverse this and see if I can, if it's going to give me the information on someone who's already been caught, right? So he puts in the information of Seattle, women 20 to 50, strangulation, whatever else. So he comes up with the Green River Killer. And he was like, oh, okay, here it is. And one of the things I found so fascinating was that when Gary Ridgway was arrested at his job at Kenworth, where he had painted, big rig trucks for 32 years, they were like, hey, we're sorry to pick you up at your job. And he goes, oh, no, this isn't my job. My job is choking people.
He said that?
Yep.
Okay.
My job is choking. My job is choking. That's my job. And he mentions, hey, if you've ever seen anything on him, and it's just heartbreaking seeing his wife, his third wife, and they'd been married 17 years. And she, apparently had zero idea. I am heartbroken whenever I see that a woman is married to someone who is a really bad monster, and has no clue. And he said, I thought about killing my first two wives, but I thought I'd get caught.
Jeez. So
he stayed married to his third wife 17 years, and she said, he treated me like a queen, blah, blah, blah. Their only issue was, some sort of a weird sex thing. And it's like, oh, okay, well, yeah, that might have been a tip-off, but I don't know, whatever. So he gets information via FOIA requests from the FBI. And, they're like, hey, we don't really have the manpower to do what you're talking about. And so here's information, put it into your algorithms. I'm not sure that they thought that it would really work. And it really, really works. And the FBI, in the 90s created, and I'm just stunned to hear this, VICAP, which is, the Violent Criminal Apprehension Program, which you hear about things. This is where sometimes I worry that, television, whether it be, scripted or reality, influences the way we think. I assumed every law enforcement agency used VICAP often. You hear about CODIS and lots of other, NCIC, the National Crime Information Center. You hear about these, centers and programs where, you can find things. And I had no idea that the Violent Criminal Apprehension Program really never took off. It was, created in the 90s by the FBI, and here's the problem. It's a voluntary reporting database.
Apparently there's a lot of those voluntary things.
Yeah.
I just pulled up MAP's website here.
Yep.
While we're talking.
Yep.
The lead article from a couple of weeks ago, police departments failed to report nearly 3,000 homicides in 2018. And it's an article about this voluntary program that's been around since 1930.
Yeah.
Where medical professionals could report what they think are murders.
Right.
I'll just read this here, what it says here. It says, from 2000 through 2018, medical authorities reported 36,769 more homicides than were reported by police.
Right.
That's the kind of
stuff. That's like the coroners that are...
Yeah, they're coroners that report most of this stuff.
That are seeing things that cops are saying, this isn't a homicide, or, it's not suspicious.
Unbelievable.
Whatever.
So VICAP isn't really used then?
No, because it's voluntary. It's, it just didn't take off. And most law enforcement agencies just don't. This is a terrible thing to say, but this is a quote from Gregory Cooper, who ran VICAP for 3 years. He said, most law enforcement agencies just don't have a real solid understanding of what the purpose is or even how to use it. It's an experiment that was never properly funded, and most police departments just don't buy into the idea.
It's just, I'm flummoxed.
I know. This is, the part that is heartbreaking is that, we go back to the different law enforcement agencies who, whether it's ego, whether it's manpower, I really don't want to point fingers at law enforcement agencies. But when I get a fantastic article like I got from this detective, it gives me hope that there are, and he's a veteran detective. He's not like some, kid right out of college who's, got a new abacus. He's a guy who is open to using anything. He works apparently now exclusively on cold cases. So he's open to using anything that will help, anything that will, give a new set of eyes or a huge group of eyes of people who can use this fantastic tool and maybe help. I'm not wanting every human being who hears this to get online and think they can solve murders. It takes a village, and it takes, some time and some interest and some passion and some smarts. And if, you feel like using this, which I just really can't wait to dig into it. I think there's so many brilliant people who are out there who want to help. And it's being open to things like this. I mean, it was heartbreaking hearing Thomas Hargrove say that I think there's a serial killer in Detroit. And, he asks for records, just records to put into his program. And they say, we don't have the budget to fulfill your request. And he's like, what do you say when a city says to you, we're too broke to pull records? We don't have the manpower in, Flint, Michigan, and Detroit to pull records to give you that you would work on for free. And, your group of people. Yeah. So he's
maddening.
I know it is maddening. And believe me, some of the information is stuff that you would know if you've watched any kind of show on the ID network. That he put in, different algorithms to find commonalities in departments that have a very high murder clearance rate. And he said the number one thing on the list was that, cops were able to chase leads in the critical early hours of finding out about a murder. And that, he said, he came up against departments that didn't want to pay overtime. And that's the thing. Yeah, it's it's budgets, it's manpower, it's heartbreaking.
So why, and then with all of that, why is there so much resistance to having the public help?
There you go.
I mean, okay.
It's a question I can't answer. And it's so Janet Oliva, who was the president of the FBI's International Criminal Investigation Analysis Fellowship, said, I believe every law enforcement agency should be made aware of this and utilize this program's database. I mean, it is a fantastic, open database that you can, look at if you're in law enforcement. And what Janet says is, let's all cooperate. Let's all give each other information. Let's share information. Let's look at each other's databases and see if something, the fact that, he sends registered letters trying to get the attention of, the police in Gary, Indiana, and 7 women die. And 4 years later, a coroner's like, you know what? We're next door to Gary and Hammond. I think you might be onto something. I think there's a serial who, by the way, had put 6 bodies in an abandoned building that no one found. And he's like, yeah, let's look over here. In Gary, I have this abandoned building with, it's, there's so much. I could go on forever talking about, it's a race issue. It's a economy issue. It's, I don't want to do that. What I want to talk about is that there's things we can do that are right. There's things we can do that can bring attention to cases. And, that's one of those things I hear over and over again in other podcasts and interviews with law enforcement. What can we do to help? Keep eyes and ears on this case. Keep it in the light. Keep shining the light on it. A big, giant Klieg light. Just keep lighting it up until people pay attention. And that's, what I'm wanting to do with giving you this information. And you can use it or not. You can just listen to this podcast and be like, hey, that's interesting. I just, little things like, in Santa Ana, the clearance rate of murders climbed from 28% in 1993 to almost 100% in 2013 when a new police chief created a special homicide unit. And he, got anonymous donations from other sources for higher rewards for tips that led to arrests. Tips, that's why we're just the Tip-Sters. We really are. And we got a really interesting email last week from someone on one of the cases we covered, and I turned that over to whoever's in charge of the case. And, I don't know how it's going to turn out. I don't know if it's going to be helpful, but I can tell you, even producer Mark said, I'm tingling right now, or something like that.
Yeah, it really, tips are everything. And people, I think a lot of people just think they hear something, or they hear a podcast like this, or they'll see something in the news, and they'll get a little, something in the back of their head will kind of tingle and say, I think, maybe I saw something. I'm not going to do anything.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the kind of stuff that where you do need to do something. It's not that hard. And anyway, I'd be fascinated to hear about this software that people can use. That sounds fascinating.
Thomas Hargrove wants everyone to be able to use this, and their website is murderdata.org. That's murderdata.org. And you can, if you get free statistical software that you download, then you can find their parameters and figure out if there's something in your area.
Is the software available on their site?
I believe that you can get statistical software free online anywhere, but then you can get their algorithms on their site. Yes. I'm not well versed in this, so I can't answer correctly, but I feel like you have to kind of know statistics to begin with, or maybe have statistical software. But then if you go to murderdata.org, you can get what you need to find out jurisdictions, the things that might help you find. I don't want you to go out and find a serial killer. But
don't do that on your own.
I don't want you to
I'm just looking at their site again, and there is a how to use tab that you can go and look and see how to use the data that they provide.
Exactly. I love the fact that, Thomas Hargrove says, I believe completely in community policing. And I don't think he means going out as a auxiliary cop and arresting your neighbor because their grass is an inch too long. He doesn't mean that. What he means is, if you know something, if you have something, if you see something, if you have an idea, you can find a way to get it known. And he had to work his ass off to get, police to pay attention to him. But I believe these things I just feel like these things are the wave of the future.
Right. And if there's, eventually if there's critical mass of people, of responsible, not crazy people doing this, I think at some point there will be a critical mass, and law enforcement will start listening more to people who are trying to help them.
I hope you're right. I pray you're right. And Thomas Hargrove says, we want to be able to crowdsource murder. And that is kind of a harsh statement. And yet, it's the thing that is keeping me going, is that you amazing tipsters, you listeners, are so brilliant and have such great ideas. I want you to have a place to look, a place to feel like if you can help. So consider looking at murderdata.org. Consider taking a workshop on how to catch a serial killer. So many things are online right now. So many things you can do from your home. You don't have to get out and, spend your shoe leather. That's what people in law enforcement do. But they might be, their use of their shoe leather might be made of better use if you have some information for them. So consider going to murderdata.org. Consider thinking about something you might have heard or know. Just consider it. And more cowbell.
Remember, if you'd like to support the podcast, go to patreon.com/justthetipsters.